the go live. Like I've hit go live several times. Oh, there we go. But I think we're in. But the go live button kept disappearing from my screen. I was like, what's going on?
Uh-oh.
Hey guys, are we chat? Are we here? Anybody here? Taps mic this thing on.
Yeah. Yep.
So hey, there we go.
There we go. It says 4 people are watching.
Thanks, Sword. I
Right
appreciate
there.
that. Yeah,
For you.
we got someone here. Awesome. And the sound is good. Great. Cool. Does anybody have? So Nani is going to do this with me here. So she is. I think she's stream. You're streaming, right, Nani, over on
Yes.
Twitch.
Yep.
Cool. So we're going to do this together. I guess the first thing, guys, if we want to decide on a class, what we want to do here. So if you have a suggestion or something you would like to build, we can of course do. If we want to do the Arcanist, we can do that. But if you have some sort of other idea, just let me know. We'll give everybody a second.
Race, do you think?
So yeah, for race actually, so Dark Elf, especially if you're on PTS and you're playing around, I would always go with Dark Elf because Dark Elf will work well for if you're going Mag or Stam.
Okay.
Also, if you're on live and you think you might do, you know, something else, then you can always swap back and forth, or if you're not sure what you're going to do long term, you can always go with that.
Really fun. And we are going to call her Nani something, whatever we decide.
Anybody?
Whatever she
No,
ends up.
nobody gets thoughts on what we want to do here. I'm not getting anything. You getting anything on
I am not. Let's see. Make sure my volumes are set up for me correctly. Talk for me, Nate.
testing?
Yep, it's working all right.
Well, no one's saying anything. I feel like we should do an Arcanist, but we could also do. You
Okay.
talked about doing a Templar. That would also work.
Okay.
If that's something you're interested in. Arcanist. Okay, Daedric saying Arcanist. We're getting
All right,
Arcanist.
Arcanist.
Okay,
There we go.
cool. All right, we're doing Arcanist.
Nani Arcanist. Because Nani's been taken, and they won't let me do more than one. I am skipping the tutorials. Oh, shoot. You know what? I just screwed up.
What'd you do?
I didn't set her to max level, so she's level 2.
Oh, I just did the same thing, and then I had to change it, and now I'm having to
Damn
go
it.
reselect everything.
Yeah, sorry.
All
I
good.
need 10 more seconds.
Take your time. All right, so it looks like we're going Dark Elf, going Arcanist. Sort, do you have a preference on spec, stam or mag or hybrid? Hybrid's definitely probably be the way to go, so we'll probably go that. But no matter what, just because. Well, actually, I don't know. If someone really wants a mag or stam, we can do that too. That's fine. It's suboptimal, but I'm sure we can do it.
Character creation. Dark Elf. Arcanist. Max level. Dark Elf. Arcanist. Go.
All right. Any thoughts on? So you said you like mag. Is that what I heard, Ronnie? I'm not getting any. Usually go mag tunes.
I do.
Okay. Cool.
Here we go.
Steph want us to get naked, apparently. Throw away all this gear they start you with.
Right?
Okay, and what kind of build we feel in here? Do you want to try a heavy attack? Do you want to do like a more traditional build? Want a 1 bar?
2-bar heavy attack. I can't.
2-bar heavy attack. Okay. The Cloud Rest build. All right. We can do that. Sure.
fun.
I'm being asked about Venomous Smite and Pillar of Nirn and the difference between those. I have to pull up Venomous Smite because I honestly don't remember.
We have permission to come to your house.
Need to set perms, huh? How do I do that? Housing not my thing.
Mine neither. All right. Let's. No, there's a way to do it though.
This video is going to turn into Night Haro tries to figure out how to do housing stuff.
Right. All right. I'm gonna go to my house and then I'll tell you how. Because if I'm doing it, I know what I'm doing. To explain it unless I'm looking at it. Alright. I think it's under F5.
Thanks, Daedric. Daedric's helped me out.
Okay, good.
Maybe.
F5 opens the editor. Yeah, I can't.
Let's see if you can now.
Okay.
Thanks, Daedric. All right.
Thanks, Daedric.
Venomous Smite.
Okay.
All right. So Venomous Smite deals critical damage, inflicting Hunter's Venom on your enemy for 10 seconds, dealing 898 poison damage to your target and enemies within 6 meters of them for every 2 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds, scales off a higher of your weapon or spell damage. Is there something in particular sort that you're looking for on Venomous Smite versus Pillar of Nirn? Besides just reading the tooltip here, I feel like this is probably going to be one of the situations where it needs testing. Maybe not. Oh, I see the main difference here. So this is Pillar of Nirn is going to do the bleed damage, but it has a 10-second cooldown, and the other one has a 15. So I think that's going to be a pretty big deal. Just way easy to get the dagger for. Yeah, I think Pillar of Nirn is going to be far superior, or at least significantly, just because one's going to have a 5-second cooldown in addition to the extra bleed damage as well. The other one might be sticky though, so it might deal damage. Yeah, Pillar though, you can farm it on normal if you're just trying to get just some basic gear. Might be the way to go. All right, so yeah, where do we want to start at here? Oh, you here? Hey, there we are. Is there any particular place you want to start with gear or anything else? I guess we said heavy attack, so let's go ahead and start with gear. So gear, we know what we're going to do for heavy attack builds, so we'll start there. We will go with, let's do sergeants to start off with, and we're not going to be doing the ring, so we'll actually do 3 pieces of jewelry and then the weapons.
How do you spell sergeants again?
S-E-R.
Just teasing.
No, you're good. Me and Nani were both in the military. And both of us forgot how to spell sergeant the other day when we were talking about it.
All right, so I'm doing one ring, one necklace, and
2
the
rings.
lightning staff?
2 rings, yeah.
Okay. How do I not have any chromium plating? That doesn't seem fair. How do I get chromium?
You should have some if you just started on a max level character. I thought it gave you some. But
yeah, no,
if you... Oh, maybe it's because I played around. So that's going to be, I usually sort by consumables, And then from there, I want to say ultimate crafting crate. Yeah, that looks right. Pull all that stuff out, and then jewelry. And then that should be everything. And you can open that a few dozen times if you need to get all the stuff you need. Now, did you try at all single barring this, Nani?
Nope, but we can.
Yeah, we can see.
So bloodthirsty?
I'm going to do, bloodthirsty on all your jewelry. And then for your front bar, you're going to do precise. I would go ahead and make a couple of extra back bars. So I'd go ahead and make an infused back bar. And then a precise front bar. And then I would probably go ahead and make a maelstrom infused back bar as well, just to have, in case we want to swap it out and we don't have to come back here.
Okay, I gotta open the jewelry thing again. I don't have any. Put in the wrong thing. That would explain it.
To really just make two precise staffs. I did. Oops. Oh well. We'll give this a shot. All right. So I think I've already told Nani this and talked to her about it, but just for everybody in stream, the trick with heavy attack builds is that the only set that you absolutely need is the Sergeant's Mail. This is the set that really makes everything hit hard. After that, you can do a lot of different sets, like a whole lot of different sets. And maybe one is a tiny bit, like a percentage or something better than another one on average. In testing, I could not tell. And I take my left click mouse button down for a long time and tested these out. So one of the things you can do if you're already running trials is you could go with Reliquin. Reliquin works really well. You do need to watch out and not do something like Whirl of the Depths because that requires a light attack to proc. So we want to go with medium armor typically. That's going to be the best damage for us. So I think that's what we'll do just to kind of show it off that you can do something like that. I've never heard anybody mention that you can do this, but it's absolutely a thing. It's only single target damage, but you don't really need the cleave on a heavy attack because you already have plenty, so... And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything you want to see, options, just throw them at me. Yeah, infuse on the back bar and then precise on the front bar, which is kind of honestly, that's the typical setup. And so I'll just run that just because some of this stuff is I just know that that's the best thing you can do. Some classes, some situations, charge can be up there as well. But precise will help you with all of your damage since it's increasing your crit chance. Whereas charge is only going to help you with your weapon enchants. And I think there's an argument to be made pure single target that charge will do a little bit more. But I don't really think it's splitting hairs. And if you're not in an already optimized group or whatever, having the little bit extra cleave damage I think is a good idea. And then for monster set, we'll go ahead and go with Zon because again, it's just going to be the most damage, and we'll forego any sort of mythic on this one. We could pick our favorite mythic if we wanted, but just for testing on the dummy, we'll do this. And we'll do one piece of light on the monster set. And the reason we're doing one piece of light is because we will probably need it to be at pin cap.
Okay.
If we don't, or if we're still below, then we would just add a second piece of light.
So if we're not doing a mythic, should I do head and shoulders for Zon then?
Yep, exactly. And a monster set versus a mythic, like the kilt, they're parsing pretty close to each other.
Okay.
Relatively.
And then
so
what
you're
am I doing on body?
body Reliquin.
Reliquin, that's right.
Yeah. just to kind of show off that, hey, you can do something else. You could do, obviously, Noble Duelist is one that a lot of people like for solo. There's like a handful of sets that you can do. You can even do something. You kind of want a monster set, obviously. We talked about this last time. Sorry, Nani, I'm telling you a bunch of stuff that we already got over, but I'll go over for a chat. So you always want a trial set with any setup you have because of this the 3-piece bonus. The Major Slayer here gives you an increase 5% damage. When you see percentage increases in ESO, typically that will be the thing that gives you the most damage. Usually if you just have a flat percentage. And so you always want that. Now, if you have, when Nani and I were talking the other day, and we're talking about Oakensole, and the first thing we did is I came in here, opened the collections, and then I pulled up Oakensole because they've changed it a little bit, and I just didn't remember what all buffs that it had. So we went through and we said, okay, cool. It gives, we had to look through these buffs. Now, I know what most of these buffs are. I still have to check sometimes because I forget, or I'm like, hey, does it do this or that? But if you don't know, all you need to do, come over here, take a look. I like ESO Hub, which is run by, was it Wohler and Outcast? But ESO Hub has a really great search where you can just search for a buff, and it'll give you all the sources of that buff. So that is a great way to see, like, hey, where does this come from? What does it do? So it'll tell you what it does, but it'll also give you all the sources. Now, when we went through this, I don't know if I want to go through the whole thing. Well, I guess we can. So Minor Berserk, that is a increased 5% damage. You normally get that in a group. You would get that from a Healer's Combat Prayer. You can also get that from the Fighters Guild skill line from, oh man, so many pop-ups. It's like the first time you do anything. You can get it from the Fighters Guild skill line here from Expert Hunter. If you go to Camo Hunter, Camouflage Hunter here, it gives you Minor Berserk if you hit an enemy from behind. So obviously that's not going to work super well if you're solo, but that's another buff that you get from that. If you're in a group, though, and we were kind of making this for and the same with this build that we're making right now. This is kind of a Cloud Rest build. Now that the Oakensole ring, if you're doing Cloud Rest, the higher pluses, and you have bar swap, you can't do a 1-bar build. It does damage and kills everybody, so you can't really do that. But you are going to have Minor Berserk most of the time from your healer. Minor Courage, this is something that you would normally get from Claw of Yolnahkrin, which is a tanking set. Now with the Arcanists have a buff that will give it to you. So again, typically there's going to be an Arcanist support in most groups from now on once everybody gets theirs leveled. So Minor Courage will be taken care of. Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy and Major Savagery. Those are the buffs. One gives you, so those are Stamina and Magicka versions of each. And then one gives you Weapon Critical and the other one gives you Spell Critical. And then one gives you Weapon Damage and the other one gives you Spell Damage. So you get those buffs from using expensive potions. So those buffs are already covered if we're using kind of the more expensive Essence of Weapon Power or Essence of Spell Power. So those are covered there. And then after that, we have Minor Force. So we can get that from using like a trap or something else, but that is something we don't have. And then there is Minor Protection. That is just something to reduce our damage taken by 5%. So this is one of the reasons that having the Oakensole ring on makes you super tanky, is because you get all these buffs. Major Resolve also gives you resistances. If you're not at cap, it's the equivalent of 9% reduced damage. So between Minor Protection, Minor Resolve, you're looking at 14% damage reduction. Then you have Minor Mending, Minor Fortitude, Minor Intellect, Minor Endurance. So Minor Mending increases your healing received. The other three increase your recoveries of those Stamina, Stamina, Magicka, and Health respectively. No, Health, Magicka, and Stamina respectively. Sorry. Minor Fortitude is Health. Minor Intellect is Magicka. Minor Endurance is Stamina. And then we got Minor Heroism. This is really nice. That just increases our ulti regen, which is another reason. It's just this ring does so much. There's not really another source of Minor Heroism that we're going to be able to get like on demand. But yeah, so anyways, just another. We're not really going to be able to do anything about Minor Heroism. Minor Slayer. Now, that's actually what caused us to pull this up, because the Minor Slayer is the buff you get as a 3-piece bonus on any trial set. So since we don't have this ring, we do want that Minor Slayer buff if we can get it. Minor Aegis, I got to look. I don't remember what Minor Aegis is. Oh, that's 5% reduced damage taken. That is what you get from a tanking set in a trial. Sorry, guys, I'm just riffing and going off memory here. So that means that with Minor Aegis, Minor Protection, and Major Resolve, that we're looking at close to probably like a 18, but we'll call it like 20% damage reduction, or at least 15%. And that's even considering like the multiplicative nature of damage reduction, which is a whole thing and is overly complicated. We don't need to go into that, but that you can see that that's quite a bit of damage you'd be taking. So instead of taking, you know, a 10,000k hit, you'd be taking an 8,000k hit. So pretty significant. Looks like Daedric had something to note. This is from Daedric. Something to note is that you're on an Arcanist, so you'll get minor courage. Oh, yeah, cool. In that case, from the self buff, right, for sure. Oh, we're on an Arcanist. I forgot what class we pulled up. Are we on an Arcanist? I don't know what we're doing. Who's in charge of this stream? Thanks, Daedric. Cool. So, and then I don't know if we'll use that skill though. I don't know if it's worth using. Do you think it is? I don't know. We'll see. And then the last thing is Empower, which is what we absolutely need as a heavy attack build. You need some source of Empower. Now, what that means usually is use Oaken Soul Ring. It's the best thing to do. I played around with not using it. You can get similar results. It's way harder. Maybe not way harder. To get similar results, I would consider it way harder. You'll see that when we talk about the parse and what to do with our skills and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be its own thing. So we'll talk about that when it gets there, I guess. So the main thing, just to kind of sum up here, what we got. So we got minor courage, minor berserk. We could maybe look for a source of, and then pretty much everything else we have a source for. But yeah, anyways, that's where I started at when me and Nani were talking. Nani, did I leave anything out for that?
I don't think so.
Cool. Yeah, so, and then it was just like, okay, cool, well, how do we get all those different buffs? And then Empower is like a major one, which we'll get to here in a second. So I think our gear is set up. Is your gear pretty much good to go?
Yeah, the gear is. Yeah, I'm all set. And I grabbed Alliance Spell Drought for pots and Witch Mothers for food.
Cool. Witch Mothers is actually, so that's actually a good point. Let's talk about that. Let me pull out my consumables. I think my push to talk is interfering with other stuff, so I'm having these like dramatic pauses here, Nani. That's all that's going on. The stream, I don't have to push to talk. They can just hear, but there's a little bit of food being made in the background here, guys, so my lovely wife is kindly cooking dinner for us. Sorry if there's a little bit of background noise. That's all it is. Did you do all your jewelry enchants and stuff like that, Nani?
Nope.
Okay.
Did that.
Yeah, cool. So jewelry, because the Sergeant set is a heavy set, so it's meant for tanks. So all that stuff will come with like max health and health recovery. I think Daedric was just pointing out here, what he meant is that, you know, like you don't need to worry about it on a dummy, but in a group, if you have an Arcanist, they're absolutely going to be, any trial group, they're absolutely going to be running the buff. Somebody will be. If you're the only Arcanist in a group, even if you're a DPS, you'll probably be running it. That's definitely true.
And for weapon enchants, what do I want?
So for your back bar, you're infused. You're going to go with an increased weapon and spell damage.
All right.
It's at the very bottom. And then for your front bar, you can kind of do whatever you want. Any sort of like straight damage. You could do Inferno, Poison, whatever you want. I'd probably do one of those. We'll just do Flame for myself over here. I think Poison does like a tiny bit more damage. It can, at least, with all buffs and everything. But we're talking like very small change. And then just make sure you got stamina or magic enchants, whatever you decide to stack. I forget what the food is called. Tester's lunchbox. There it is. Yeah. So, talking about the food. So for a heavy attack build, I honestly think sugar skulls is probably the way to go most of the time. If you are not going to go that, you said you were using witch mothers.
Yes.
Is that right? So
Yeah.
if you look at the stats you're getting from that, so we'll call it 2,900, so 2,900. It's a little bit less than that of Magicka. If you compare that to, well, we'll just say compare it to um, maybe one of our tri stats or something like that. I guess I should go ahead and grab all these out actually. Or like a ghastly eyeball or something like that to be able to compare these two. Basically, it's not exactly, it's like 10.5, but if you take however much max stats you would get from something and divide by 10, that's the equivalent of weapon and spell damage you're getting from that thing. So, for example, if we ran Ghastly Eyeball, we would get another, call it 1,700 max Magicka from running Ghastly Eyeball. Or if you run something like Bewitched Sugar Skulls, you're looking at, what is that? 14 or 1,300 or something like that. So that's going to be, 130 weapon and spell damage that you're getting from that max resource. So Witch Mother's Potent Brew, if basically anything with three resources that you're getting from it, so three benefits, so besides Sugar Skulls, is going to be fairly inferior, and you would rather run something that gave you just more max stats. So the ideal thing to do, if you're parsing, what you would do is just use something that gave you one max stat. So if you go down to the very bottom, I think, or somewhere, there should be. I thought there was some green food in here that just gave you like one max stat. But if not, there's a lot of green food that'll give you like 6,000 of one resource or another, and you can just use that.
Okay.
If not, you want to use something that gives you max health and max stamina and no recovery. So it looks like braised rabbit and spring vegetables for stamina, which I'm getting in trouble for. We have a bunch of rabbits, and my wife hates it that they're on the menu. But that gives like 5,000 max resources. So you're looking at like another over 200 equivalent in weapon and spell damage. So that could be significant.
Okay. And what enchants should I use for jewelry?
For jewelry, you just want to use the weapon and spell damage, and then I would use the ones that give you the stamina recovery, because you're going to be heavy attacking, so you'll constantly have full Magicka, but you might want more stamina recovery. And honestly, that's actually a reason on some of these builds, like these heavy attack builds, that you want to run stamina, just because roll dodging and other stuff like that, or if you're solo, it can just be nice blocking, what have you. Even though you're not having like huge recoveries of those things, just having the extra can be helpful.
All right. So increased magical harm.
And then don't forget to slot your attribute points once you're done there.
Oh, that's right. So don't do all three with the increased magical harm. Do one for stamina recovery.
Oh no, all increased magical harm, but now they have now they give you like a tiny bit of recovery.
Okay.
This is going to be fun. I haven't actually looked at this nearly as much as I like know all the other classes, so this could be a fun one. This could be interesting. And then we've also got to do our CP.
Yes.
So I'll kind of hold off until you're there. So for everybody following along, okay, cool. So I just go ahead and start, putting in points. You have enough on the PTS that you cannot worry about it, and just put points in anything and everything that would possibly help your damage that is not already associated with, what doesn't have to be slotted. So I just start slotting stuff. Now, if you look in the caster here, the mage in her left elbow, which is our right, that's going to be an interesting place for us on heavy attacks. And when you go into the tree, I don't even read what most of this stuff is. If it's like not slottable, I just put points in it.
Gotcha.
And if you don't have that much CP or you're not on the PTS or whatever, then obviously, once you're experimenting and you figure out what you want to build towards, then you go that direction and then make sure you get there and what have you. But this is where we're going to find Weapons Expert, which is the 1 CP that you absolutely want on any heavy attack build. Just increases our heavy attack damage, light and heavy attack, but that's always the first CP that I slot. Now, after that, there's a couple things we can do. There might be one of these that is a little bit better than the others. So if you're not at crit damage cap, then going with something like Backstabber or Fighting Finesse is always going to be the best way to go to get you up to that cap, unless you're like within 2%. But just to give you an idea of the way this works, so let's say like we take a look at Deadly Aim, for example, which gives a total of 6% damage increase. Now, most of the time, and that's for single target damage. Now, most of the time, we end up with like half of our abilities being single target. So you're looking at like a 3% damage increase in like an ideal scenario. So just keep in mind, if for anybody out there, if you're looking at all this stuff and you're trying to figure out like, hey, which CP it is, do I slot, which one is better, and what have you, even if you pick like the worst thing you can, you're looking at like a 3% damage difference. Now that could add up, and there's other buffs in the way that the buffs in ESO work. It actually ends up being less than that. You're actually like looking at a fairly low percent decrease in damage if you pick the worst possible thing you can. Now, obviously you have multiple sources of that, and if you're doing that with everything, it's going to be a problem. You lose a couple hundred spell power here, you lose a couple percentage points damage over there, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people get really stressed out about this stuff, or like think that they have to go do whatever is best. By and large, I think that once you understand what the abilities actually do and the way they actually work, I don't think it's that hard. I think, and it's not that big a deal if you pick the wrong thing. So speaking of Deadly Aim, actually, Deadly Aim is one that I find for a heavy attack to be very non-intuitive. So the way that heavy attacks work in ESO is that your damage leading up to the final tick of a heavy attack is, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, this is my understanding. I have not tested this extensively, and if you don't test things in ESO, it's really hard to know if it's true, and you have to test it a lot. But my understanding is that the damage leading up to the final tick is considered a damage over time, and will cleave will do single target, and then the damage at the end is a explosion, and that's AoE damage. Can someone confirm that my understanding is correct? Naughty, do you have a firm understanding of this?
And I do not know if it's considered the first part that you said. The second part is correct. It's at the end. It does its explosion, which does the AoE damage and the knockback.
Right, and since that is from the passive, it seems to... So you actually want, even though you think AoE for heavy attack builds, you actually want Deadly Aim usually slotted. It's, generally speaking, best in slot.
Yep.
So that is the one thing. It's like, that's super confusing. After that, I usually go with something like Wrathful Strikes as another one to throw in here, and I'm trying to think... I'm not sure if I know what our last one should be off the top of my head. I'm kind of thinking that like Backstabber or Finesse, if we're not near cap, I think that might be the way to go. But let's actually just leave it for now, and we can just test and see what see what we're at. For the red tree, honestly, we really don't need to put any of this stuff here, but just for the sake of it being for just pure DPS. So normally if I'm testing out a build for DPS, I don't even mess with this stuff. But if I am doing this for like an actual real world build or something, I love Fortified. That increases our armor, which reduces our damage taken. So every 660 armor gives us 1% damage mitigation if we're not already at the resistance cap, and that's for everything. So that is going to be, what is that? A little bit less than 3%. Call it like 2.7, 2.6. I usually also slot Rejuvenation. Now, we're on a heavy attack build, so this would probably be the first one I would drop, and I would probably go with something like Expert Evasion for a free dodge roll, something like Slippery for the free break free. Celerity, I love Celerity. That like just the extra 10% movement speed while you're in combat, especially with a heavy attack. Honestly, I would probably keep Slippery or Celerity rather slotted 100% of the time on a heavy attack build. But I think it's kind of optional for you at that point. Okay. We did a lot. Let's just go. We're going to go to the dummy here. And I'm just going to hit it once and then pull up CMX. Oh, I don't have all my buttons set correctly. Anyways. All right, cool. So we'll kill the dummy. We're going to pull up CMX. And pull up CMX. We're going to make sure that we're under fight stats, which is like a star with a sword through it. And then we're going to, that's where it pulls up. And then we're going to go into info. No, I'm sorry. Fight stats is in the right place. I'm sorry. We just need to look at our Magicka stuff. So we've got stamina, health in the very center, and then we've got Magicka. Nani, I guess you probably can't see this. I don't know if you have the stream up.
I do. I've
Okay.
got you on my phone.
Cool.
But you're tiny.
Okay, so it's right in the center. So we can see penetration. We're doing good on penetration. Looks like we're a little over. What's that? 1,600 over. Yeah, we'll call it 16 and some change. So we could probably go all medium on our armor and still be at full penetration, at least for a trial setup. So obviously, if we're on a different target or a different dummy, if we're going to use this for overland, we would want to tweak that based on what penetration we needed, but we just look at it here. So first thing we're actually going to do, I'm going to go over here and make, well, actually, I'm sorry, before we do that. So we want critical damage to be capped out at 125 or as close to it as we can. So we're going to be able to slot Backstabber here, and that's going to be able to give us 15% increased critical damage, and then we're going to get another 2% for switching another piece of medium armor, and so that's going to put us right there at 124, and we're going to call that close enough. So for that last CP, we're going to choose Backstabber. And if you're ever in a fight or you're doing stuff solo where you can't be behind an opponent, then what you would do is just slot Fighting Finesse, and it'll give you a little bit less. Oh, it's only 10% now. I promise I've made builds recently. So Backstabber is going to give us 10%. Maybe it always was 10%.
So we want to make like medium shoulders?
Yeah. Whatever you had light, just go ahead and swap that to medium.
Okay. I only have about 10 more minutes.
No worries. We're definitely not going to get through. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll keep going though, and
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
I need.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about what we can put on our bar. So just for starters, and this is part of the problem actually, we're going to be fine with our crit damage because we're also going to have Barb Trap, which we didn't have down. Sorry, I guess I'm slipping up here, guys. But that's going to give us another 10% critical damage. So we can actually probably drop Backstabber and go with something else here. I will have to think about that and maybe get back. So we got Wrathful Strikes. Yeah. I'll have to look what I've done previously because I think I had to test it out to find out exactly. But anyways, so first things first, Barb Trap is a really great skill. There are passives in the Fighter's Guild skill line, which give you increased weapon and spell damage for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. In addition to that, Barb Trap does really good damage, and it also gives us, like, it's good just as a dot. Like, you could put this on your build if it did nothing else besides the dot, but then there's also the passive that gives us the increased weapon and spell damage, and then it also gives us Minor Force, which increases our critical damage by 10%. So we're going to take that and put it on our front bar. It's just such a good skill. We're always going to want it there. Now, we're going with a heavy attack build, Nani. I guess we probably want something a little bit more on the simple, a little bit more on the easier side. Are we looking for a Cloud Rest type build still?
Actually, I'd like to be able to
Does that also mean by anywhere? Do you also mean solo?
Other trials.
Other trials. Okay.
Yeah.
So I still think with a heavy attack build, usually we're going for something a little bit more on the simple side. We would maybe slot Camo Hunter if this is gonna be like pure like single target. Where I typically start out, how I do this, and again, the whole point is just to explain my whole process, is I just start down the class skills. And if I find something that does damage and seems like it's a damage dealing ability, then I put it on my bar. So for example, we'll go up here to Herald of the Tomb. I think we already know the Unblinking Eye, super cool ult. That's our DPS ult. I'm kind of going a little bit fast, but if you just read through here, you'd kind of see that it's a DPS ult. Now, looking at the morphs here, we can see that one of them, the Tide King's Gaze, it increases their duration, automatically follows the initial target, and searches for a new one if that target is slain. So that doesn't tell me off the bat if that's the morph I want, so I go look at the other one, Languid Eye, applies a snare to enemies hit, and damage increases over time. So this is a little bit hard because when I see it applies a snare, I think PvP, and then I see increases damage over time, and I think PvE. Now the other one will switch targets if the initial target dies, and we're usually concerned in trials with doing the most damage to a boss. So it makes me think that this, switching targets isn't going to be that important. And so probably what we want, it's really a question of, does the increased duration, is that better than the damage ramping up over time? I actually don't know which is best. We could do some calculations and figure that out. But for right now, for sake of time, I would probably pick Languid Eye. Is that the best DPS? Does anybody know? Let me know in chat. We can respec this, though, if we're wrong about it. We can do some math on it. Think the ramp is better? All right, cool. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured as well. Now, looking at first DPS skill here is Runeblade. Now, I can see, okay, it does some damage, but this ability deals 3% increased damage for each crux when cast. So that's important, okay? The more crux we have when cast. Let's take a look at our morphs of this skill. I believe, I'm just guessing by seeing, like, I know this is a DPS ability. I know this is our beam. So this, usually the way it works in ESO is one of these skills, or one of these skill lines rather, is the DPS skill line. One of them will be the tanking, one of them will be the healing. And sometimes if you're on different, different classes, there'll be more of a preference, or there'll be more like, okay, this is a healing skill line, but there's a good tank, or there's a good DPS ability, but it'll more or less be one thing. So then we go to take a look at the morphs here. Has an increased critical chance for each active crux. Okay. And then the other one is deals increased damage, and the last rune deals damage in an area. So area typically means it's going to do less single target damage, so that's why I would tend to go with the other. Like, that's literally the reasoning here. Without looking at any damage or anything else, I think that, okay, if this one does area damage and the other one doesn't, then I probably want the one that is not area damage. And the increased critical for having active crux seems like a good thing as well. So we'll go with the Writhing Rune Blades on that. Nani, do I need to let you go?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go, but I'm going to rewatch this later. I am going to copy what you're doing.
Okay. Cool.
But I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
And everybody have a great night.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for dropping in.
Bye.
All right, moving on here, we got Fate Carver. This is our beam. And then taking a look at the morphs of this, one applies a snare to damaged enemies, consuming a crux, also increases their duration and snare strength. So that is important to note that this is going to be something that consumes crux. We'll need to make note of that. And then the other morph, gain a damage shield while channeling, and immunity to interrupts while the shield is active. Consuming crux also reduces the cost. So we're generally not going to be concerned, especially on a heavy attack build, but just in general with reducing cost on most abilities, because usually we don't need it. And so that's one of the benefits you're getting. If you're getting a benefit of reduced cost, you're probably not getting some other benefit. So we'll probably choose the exhausting Fate Carver here. It applies snare. I also think when I think of that, I think, hey, that's PvP usually, because that's not going to do much in PvE most of the time. Consuming Crux also increases their duration. Let's see, how long does it increase the... consuming a Crux. Okay, that's both of them. That consuming Crux also increases the damage done. So this is something that we really want to make sure that we're generating Crux for, and then probably beaming. That makes sense. It's a 4.5 second channel, so we'll probably generate Crux, then beam, generate Crux, do re-up our dots, and then beam. I don't know if that's the best thing to do, but probably something like that is what we'll do. So I think we'll just go with exhausting Fate Carver here. Go ahead and pick that. Our Abyssal Impact. Take a look what we got here. Cephaliarch's Flail on cast. And I'm just looking at the new effect, by the way, to determine which of these, if any, which one of these we want. So on cast, you heal yourself and generate Crux. You deal increased damage to enemies below half health. Okay, so there's a built-in execute. And you heal yourself. And it generates a Crux. Converts into a magic ability and deals frost damage. Consumes Crux to increase the base damage and Abyssal Ink strength. So this is interesting because I would tend to think that this version here, the frost version, would be better, but it consumes Crux instead of generating it. And so, it kind of depends on how much damage our beam does. Probably, in my experience with healing and tanking builds with the Arcanist, is that really, like, you need one ability that consumes Crux and nothing else, because otherwise you'll never have any Crux. So I think that we'll probably go with the generates Crux, and then we'll use our beam. I think that'll also lend itself to the idea of a heavy attack build, which hopefully will be easier and less button pressing with the heavy attack build. So I think we're going to go with Cephaliarch's Flail as opposed to the Tentacular Dread. Cool. All right, now we've got Inspired Scholarship, increases the frequency of damage. And this is just, what is it, a 30-second dot? Okay, it pulses every 3 seconds. Each pulse enhances our class abilities and strike an enemy and deal some damage. Okay, so it does damage every 3 seconds and generates a Crux if you have none. This is a weird ability at first. Not like weird in a bad way, but like this is different than a lot of other abilities. It also gives you major brutality and major sorcery. And it doesn't matter. This is the first. Oh, this is that skill. It doesn't matter what bar it's on. So this is the first skill in the game where it gives these benefits just by being on either bar. So we probably want this. And that also tells us we probably want to put it on our back bar. Now let's check out our other morph. When dealing damage, restore magic and stamina. We don't need the recovery, and the other one just increases the frequency of damage. Oh, so it's every 5 seconds down here. Okay, so yeah, we're going to go with Inspired Scholarship, I think, and we'll put that on our back bar. I also think this might be the one that looks really cool, and that's a valid reason to put a skill on your bar as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to move it to the back there. Look at Imperfect Ring. Place a root under the target that deals damage and pulls nearby enemies after a delay. And Fulminating Rune deals additional area damage after delay. Up to 3 enemies can use the Rune Break synergy. Huh. Okay, so it does a bunch of damage over 20 seconds. They both do that. This one does it over 18. So in theory, this one would do more damage, more quickly. I guess what's the second ability? Oh, the synergy. The synergy on this is the same on both tooltips. The lingering effect here, the rune lingers on the initial target for 6 seconds before detonating, dealing extra frost damage to all enemies within 7 meters. It cannot be primed with Fulminating Rune again for 6 seconds. Okay, so you can't use this as like a spam bull or anything. Yeah, so the the synergies here, besides the fact that there's a lot less synergies in the game than there used to be, the synergies in a trial when you're fully buffed are going to be pretty huge. So let's just like take a look. For example, when you're like fully buffed for a raid, let's just hit it, get the buffs going, pull it back up. Yeah, so it went up to 13,000. So then there's also crits and everything else. I think you can crit on these. Maybe you can't. But that's a significant amount of damage, you know? So we're talking like half, a little bit more than half of the damage this would do over 20 seconds. Definitely more damage than you would do with a given spammable at any time. That's going to be like around 8,000 to 9,000 damage. So I tend to think that the synergy bonus, even though our DPS might not look... it might not be worth it for our personal DPS. I think the synergy on this and the fact that you're giving 3 synergies with this one skill, I'm going to go with Fulminating Rune. I could be wrong on that. There could be a better thing to do, but with the synergies can crit. Thanks, Daedric. All right, cool. Synergies can crit. So that means that over 50% of the time, that's going to be a crit. So that's even more damage. So yeah, I think that probably this is going to be the best thing for overall group damage, even if not for like single target damage. So we'd want to run this anyways. Another note on this, like if the other damage, let's just say hypothetically, and it doesn't matter about the particular skill, but let's say just hypothetically, the other morph did more single target damage on a dummy. Most people would morph that, and that's what they would use on the dummy, and then they would remorph it for a trial. When I parse, I usually just run whatever I'm running in a trial, unless there's a strong reason not to. Yeah, and Daedric here is suggesting that the extra AoE damage on cast makes the morphs closer in damage. Yeah, that makes sense. It might even be the exact same. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time. We've been streaming for almost an hour here. I think I'm going to try to get a bar setup going, and then I'll just show you. Maybe we'll pick this skill, and I'll show you show you guys how I would calculate the damage to determine if this was a skill or which morph I wanted to pick. And which morph is the same as like choosing one skill over another, right? The same logic will hold. So let's go ahead and look at these other skill lines. Oh my gosh, so many skills. Again, I'm just thinking about time here. I'm considering... trying to think of what I could do to speed this up a little bit. I don't really think there is anything, so we'll just keep going through, I guess. So here's an interesting ability, Runic Jolt. This is a new taunt. It also applies Minor Maim. You can do that with an Ice Staff now and Minor Lifesteal. This is not something I would use in a trial because obviously it also taunts. But it being able to apply Minor Lifesteal, is this not the one that... Oh, you know what? I'm getting this confused with a different ability. Okay, so this is the taunt. Yeah, we don't need this. Sorry. You know what it is? It's Rune of the Eldritch Horror. I say with confidence that I do not actually have. Yeah, this is it. Okay, so Rune of Uncanny Adoration. So charms the target and causes them to move towards you. Okay, cool. The other morph, though, applies Minor Brittle, and that will increase our critical damage on the target. So we have that on the dummy, I believe. Pretty positive about that. Maybe we need to double check, but we have that typically, but you won't have this if you're solo. And so the Minor Brittle will increase your critical damage by another 10%. Now, when we attacked earlier and we checked our critical damage, you know, we're not going to have all those buffs when we're running around solo. So if we were running around solo, I would really consider running this ability if you're on like a single target boss fight, like a world boss or something like that. I think that it lasts for long enough that I think it's 20 seconds. That if you're on like a heavy attack build, I would consider using this. Yeah, 20 seconds. And then the minor vulnerability is going to be another 5% damage increase. I think with those two things combined, that this would probably be worth running. It's going to be about another 10% damage increase on a particular target using this one skill every 20 seconds. I tend to think. I don't know for sure, but I tend to think that this might be worth running. All right. I think the rest of these are protection abilities. Man, I just don't have time to go through all this. And I really want to, because I'd really like to talk about reasons where you might want to slot something like this if you're not in group content, but why you might want to do it if you're solo. So maybe let's just do it. What do you guys think? Do we have any thoughts in chat if you want to go through all this and like talk about what to do for a solo build, or if we should just say, hey, we're here for the max damage and not worry about it? Keep looking while we're talking. I kind of know what some of these abilities are and what they do from doing healing and tanking videos and kind of like looking at this a lot more. So most of this I know does not actually increase our damage at all. So I think we might just move on. So one of the issues that we have right now is that we've got all these abilities to use, and we're trying to do a heavy attack build, and we're not going to be able to cast all of these abilities because the idea here is that a heavy attack takes 1.8 seconds, skill cast takes a second, and then, you know, some of these abilities last for different lengths of time. So what'll happen is that we won't be able to keep up all these dots. When you're doing a heavy attack build and you're going to parse, you always want to do a skill, heavy attack, skill, heavy attack. That is what I have found. There might be some exception to that, but that is what I've generally found to always do the best damage. Casting 2 skills will reduce your damage most of the time if you cast them in a row, and then also just heavy attacking will often do less damage. So usually it's a skill, heavy attack that you want to be doing. So we need less skills to cast. Now with the Sork, I know from messing around with Nani, so this would be something you'd have to experimentally determine, but messing around with Nani with a Sork that had 3 buttons and then 2 pets on both bars, that was more than enough, honestly, to be casting, and honestly could have been less. So I think what we would do in this situation is probably throw, so these Fighter's Guild abilities that increases your weapon and spell damage per ability slotted. I think we probably just want to slot some Fighter's Guild abilities on this bar. So we'll go and do Camo Hunter, and that'll make sure that if nothing else, we have the Minor Berserk, and then it'll also give us those passives. So I'm going to throw it on there. Cool, we already have that skill in the back bar, and that's going to be okay. We could potentially throw more on. We probably want to throw some sort of self-heal on our back bar, just as like a placeholder, and just, you know, because we might need it at some point, and we just won't use it if we don't need it. There actually is a better class heal. I'm sorry. If you want stamina, you could go with Vigor. Since we're going to have Infinite Magicka, since we're doing a heavy attack build, I know that under the healing skill line here, one of these is the right heal. I have to look. It's the Runement. Yeah, and heals you for an additional amount over time. Healing low health targets generates ultimate. Healing a target under 50% health will give us minor heroism. The minor heroism would be nice. How often are we under 50% health? Hopefully not often. So there is a situation where I could see using this, but I think most of the time the extra healing, the little heal over time, would be better. So we're going to go with Evolving Runement. And we'll put that over here. So that's looking pretty good. But we got a couple of more spots to figure out skills for. So first off, we're going to go with Wall of Elements, I think, on our back bar. And the reason we want Wall of Elements is because we want to be able to proc our weapon enchant and make sure it's up all the time. So if you keep your Wall of Elements down, this weapon damage enchant will keep itself procced pretty much off cooldown, right? So pretty much 100% of the time. So that's why we'll go with that. Weapon abilities from your weapon skill line will proc your enchant, is the moral of the story here. So also your light attack also has a chance, I believe, of proccing it as well, but having a damage over time, a dot, is what you really want. And there's probably more we could say there, but Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Now, the morph of Wall of Elements, this is interesting because this has an explosion that it does at the end here, doing 4,000 damage, but we also notice that it normally does about 1,000 damage every second. It lasts for 10 seconds. Now, Elemental Blockade, it says 12 seconds, but when you have it fully leveled up, it's actually 15 seconds, and it does the same exact damage every second. So when we hit the button to cast this ability, this one will do basically 15,000 damage currently with our current setup. And this one will do 10,000 damage over 10 seconds, and then it'll do another 4,000. So this one technically does a little bit less damage, but it does it over a shorter period of time. Now, to be able to figure out, I don't know if I want to go into this. Now, to be able to figure out which of these is better, what you need to do is figure out, okay, well, an easy way to do it, for example, is let's say we cast Elemental Blockade twice. That would give us a 30-second duration, and let's say we cast Unstable Wall of Elements. We'd have to cast it 3 times. So what you would do is you'd say, okay, cool, so we're going to consider a 30-second, time interval here. We would have to cast this one 3 times. So we'd take the full damage it would do, multiply it times 3. We would take Elemental Blockade and say, okay, the full damage this would do, multiplied times 2. And then we couldn't actually compare those numbers, though, because with Unstable Wall of Elements, we've had to cast it 3 times, and we've only had to cast this twice. And that means that we have 1 second where we could cast some other ability. And typically what that would be is our spammable. So what we would want to do is add in 1 cast of our spammable into this Elemental Blockade and to that damage pool, and then we would want to compare these two to figure out which one did more or less damage. Hey, Kitties. Kitties, we are just talking about skills and trying to figure out what we want to put on our bar. And right now I'm kind of talking about how to compare morphs of a skill, just how to compare the damage. I think this is in-depth enough that probably I'll do this in its own video and maybe we can talk about it then, but I think I'll probably just leave it here. But that's how you would determine which of these morphs is better. Another thing to consider is if you have some sort of spammable, like on this build, that generated Crux, or if we're trying to get just more heavy attacks in because we have too many skills to cast already, we might want to go with the longer duration version. So I think I'm actually going to do that here. This could be a little bit less damage, but that's probably what I would go with based on the fact that we already have a 4.5 second channel ability. We've got heavy attacks that take almost twice the length of a normal skill to cast. So I think I'm going to go with Blockade. And that puts us, we really need another passive, or we need to put another passive on our front bar and move something to our back bar because we're just not going to be able to keep all these dots up, I don't think. This one's 30 seconds, which is nice. But nothing, yeah, and this, yeah, it's hard to say because this 4.5 second channel is going to be so long. So if we were stacking Magicka, just as a note, we could also put Mage's Guild abilities on our bar. Oh, I know what we need. I'm such a dork. I know what we need on a bar, and we actually need a couple of them. Anyway, so if we're stacking Mag, then we would go with something like Mage Light. We would morph that to Inner Light, and we put it on our front bar for the passive. This also increases our max Magicka, so if we were stacking Magicka, that would be the reason we want to do this. But since we are stacking Stamina, or at least I am, we're going to stick with Fighter's Guild abilities. It really doesn't matter. We can really put anything. Also of note, we're gonna put on our front bar to increase our damage, Flawless Dawnbreaker, and we will use our class ult on the back bar, and that's where we'll actually proc that at. I think I'm literally just gonna put this on our bar. We're not gonna use it. This is a little ugly. I don't actually love this entirely, but we're just gonna go with it for now. Another thing that we need, we talked about earlier when we were talking about Oakensoul, that we needed to make sure that we had some source of Empower down there. It's the very last thing on the screen. You see it, Empower there. Empower increases our heavy attack damage done by 70%. It's pretty huge. It's been recently reduced from 80 to 70, which actually ends up being about a 5%, I think, damage decrease. I think Skinny Cheeks did some math on that. So what that means is that we need some other source of that. But if you look down here in the Mages Guild, one of these passives, yeah, there it is, Might of the Guild. Casting a Mages Guild ability grants you Empower, increasing your damage of heavy attacks against monsters by 70% per 10 seconds. Now, I wish with everything in my being that they would modify this and make it 20 seconds, because if you look at all these abilities, they all last for 24 seconds. They all last for a very long time. This lasts for even longer, but it doesn't do any damage. So what we need to do then is put one of these abilities on our bar, but we also need to cast it every 10 seconds and not every 24 seconds. So that is something we're going to have to keep in mind. We might want to put this on our front bar, depending on what else we have here. It might end up back on our front bar. But that will be something that if we're going to keep up our Empower, that we cast that quite often. So I'm just trying to decide what to do, because we have too many abilities and we don't even want to be casting some of these. So now we're just going to go and pare this down, and that's what I would typically do. I guess we're doing okay with being able to cast 4 abilities on our back bar, but I still have this Scalding Rune that we're going to be needing to cast every 10. So I'll just have to look at these and read them a little bit. I'm sorry, that's going to be a little bit boring for the stream, just to figure out what we want to do. I think what we're going to do is just pick that anything that generates crux is something that we're gonna keep, and then we'll consume it with our Fate Carver here. Is that our beam? Yeah, it's our beam. Okay, so this creates a series of runes, sloshing them in a foe, dealing damage up to 3 times, and it generates a crux. Okay, cool. So we're absolutely going to leave that there. I think our Cephaliarch's Flail also generated a crux as well, if I recall. Or maybe this one's just a morph that doesn't consume a crux. I don't see that it generates a crux. Oh, yeah, there it is. Generates a crux. Okay, cool. And then our heal, and then this ability generates a crux. So I think the way that this inspired scholarship might be supposed to work is that maybe if like we use our beam, it lasts for 4.5 seconds. It consumes our crux. During that time period, we will not have any, and so we will start back with 1 crux. So I think that means what we can do is cast 2 skills, like our Writhing Rune Blades, maybe Cephaliarch's Flail if we need to, and then we would immediately go back into beaming again, or something like that would be a way of doing it, I guess. So I'm going to leave this looking at Fulminating Rune. Oh, is this the one that gave us all the ally synergies? Man, I want all these skills. This is a problem. What do you think, Daedric? You got any thoughts on what to drop here? I'm thinking about just doing this. Maybe we'll try this. And then I'm just going to adjust these skills to where I think I want them. I'm going to put the longer duration ones towards the end of my bar, because that's what I typically do. Spammable. I believe this is more of a spammable type casting ability. I think also switch these front bar to back bar. I'm just going to change some settings here so that I can, I'm used to bar swapping with tab, so I'll just swap that out. So hopefully I can get a decent parse going on here. This is the annoying part about coming onto the PTS, is having to change all this stuff. Just put all this stuff to always show, turn on our timers. These timers have been bugging when I was messing around the other day, and that was pretty annoying, but hopefully it won't be too bad today. I think there's the one, yeah, quick cast ground abilities. This is actually really important to always have on. What that does is I don't even know if we have anything. I don't know what all these abilities do. Yeah, so like our rune. So I'm hitting a button once and it's auto casting. If you don't have that as on, if you have it set to automatic, you'll have to hit the button twice, and that can be really annoying. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and eat some food. Oh, do you want sugar skulls? We probably want some braised rabbit, actually. So this is from Daedric. It comes down to how strong the beam is. If it's more than a buffed heavy, it seems like you wouldn't even want to build around heavies. If it's weaker, probably want skills that makes flux passively. Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Okay, so a couple of things. I think I have some skeletons over here. Yeah, get a whole bunch. All right, so we'll make a note. So whenever I cast the Mage's Guild rune, it looks like Empower procs. Just by the timing on that, it looks like it procs as soon as I hit it. Yeah, it does. So it starts the Empower as soon as I hit the button, which is kind of not kind of. It's really confusing because that means I'm not getting any timers on my skill. That's really confusing because normally it takes a second and a half to go off, but it's actually when you hit it. So it's gonna or 2 seconds. I'm sorry. It's gonna take 2 seconds to go off, and then it's gonna go off, and then it'll have a 24-second timer, which means that I need to count the 2 seconds and then off of the 10-second timer that it gives the Empower, and then subtract 8 from 24. So it's every 16 seconds. Every time this says 16, I want to be recasting Mage's Guild run. Let me see. I don't have... I thought I turned on the timers. Oh, there we go. I did not. Okay, so that timer actually started with 26 seconds. Yeah, so at 18 seconds, I want to be recasting my run, which is really confusing, but is what it is. So just thinking about, like, okay, what do we want the rotation to be here when we actually go into this parse? I always kind of like to do that before I go in. So I can cast Mage's Guild early because it takes 2 seconds for it to arm. Oftentimes ultimates take a few seconds to go off. I'm not sure if that's the case with the Languid Eye. I don't think so, but maybe we'll just cast it once to see. Nah. Yeah, that didn't seem like much of a delay. Maybe a little bit, just because it's a ground cast ability. So we'll open with that. Is there anything I can pre-buff? Yeah, it looks like there's a couple of things, so we can pre-buff. Oh man, that looks so cool. I will say that is one of the cool things, is that the look of a lot of this stuff. So we'll pre-buff our Inspired Scholarship. Obviously, we can't do Blockade. Fulminating Rune, I don't think we can either. I think that's going to be... Yeah, I can't even cast that unless I'm pointing at somebody. And then I think all these other ones are also going to be instant cast abilities. Oh, there's actually a cast time in the Cephaliarch's Flail. That's tricky. So this increases our damage done to enemies, so we'll want to make sure we keep that up as well. That'll be one of our higher priority skills. So something to think about. We'll use our Fate Carver whenever we have 3 Crux. We will use our Rune Blade. I think this skill will just kind of be when all of our other dots up, we'll use our Writhing Rune Blades. And then, of course, we'll try to keep Trap down as well. We're not going to be able to keep all these dots up. So anyways, let's just try a parse here. I'm only going to go to like 60% or something like that. Let me actually turn this on because I have an overuse injury and I just don't want to have an issue with it. I forgot where this is at. Is it interface, nameplates? Hey, there we go. All right. So yeah, I'm going to try to go to like 60% or something like that. We'll just see how we do. Hopefully that's long enough that any kind of like initial damage bursts or anything like that won't be that big of a deal. So, all right, let's just give it a shot. It's already kind of messed up there, but that's all right. uh. All right, let's try that again. That felt terrible. Forgot what I was doing. So as I'm thinking about this, like what I want to cast first, I can precast this Inspired Scholarship. I can precast the Ruin as well as Trap. And then after that, I probably want to open with something like our ulti. After that, then it's kind of a question of what should we do here. I want to get my wall down so that I can get my back bar buff going. I also want to get Scalding Ruin War to be going, so I'll have the Empower, but I want to make sure that I keep that Empower up 100% of the time if I can. After that, I really want to get Seveliarch's Flail going for the increased 5% damage. I don't really need to cast Ruin Blades for anything, so I think after that it would probably be time to beam. Maybe one cast just to make sure. Well, I should already have a Crux going, so probably Fate Carver at that point. I'm not actually sure, but let's give this a shot. Kind of got the rotation going, and then after that, oh god, this is bad. I don't know if I can heavy attack. I don't know if I can do a heavy attack build. So I think what this comes down to. Also, we need to switch our back bar. I've still got the Maelstrom down, and there's no way I'm going to be able to keep that buff up. How much is too much crit? You're using Mother Sorrow, and you got 48% spell crit. So there's Zombie. You can never have too much crit. Just to answer that part of the question. Mother Sorrow though is like you could find a much better set for that, and so I wouldn't. You're going to get more damage from doing something else. It's really not about like having too much crit or not enough crit or whatever. It's just a question of like, could you get more damage from something else? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Is there a particular spec or class that you're on that you want to tell me about? Because that could also affect it, like what I could suggest. Yeah, but as far as like in general though, you can't have too much crit. I want to use that to make sure we don't have using EC macro using EC. So on a macro using EC, are you using this for trials or dungeons, solo content? Oh well, I'm sorry, that is probably a rhetorical question, but. If you're using EC, it's probably for group content, I assume. Because you really only want to use EC if you are in a group, because it buffs it buffs you, but it also buffs the group, and that's what makes it the most advantageous. Otherwise, there's something else you could do. But if you're doing like a macro, if you want something easy that will do a little bit less damage, you could go with something like World of the Depths. World of the Depths is everything but PvP. Yeah, World of Depths with EC, the problem is that both of them are light, and right now the best damage you can do is by going with like 5 or 6 pieces of medium and then going with the rest light. So that would make it that you had to wear mostly light armor. If you did do that, though, you could make sure your monster set, if you're wearing like kilt or something like that, that would give you like 3 pieces of medium, which would be okay, but wouldn't be, as good as 5. But I probably wouldn't think too much of it. The good thing about World of Depths is that it's super easy to proc. So all you got to do is like light attack, I believe. It's always procced basically. Yeah, every time you light attack. So pretty easy to do as long as you're not doing a heavy attack build. Alternatively, you could go with EC as much as you need to on the body, and you could go with something like Reliquin. You do need to make sure that you're hitting all your light attacks. The main thing is that you generally want to pair a non-trial set with a trial set. So that's why with your EC, which is a non-trial set, you want to pair a trial set because of the 3-piece bonus, which we talked about at the very beginning of this video, or the stream, but it just does an extra 5% damage. It's a pretty big deal, so I'd go with that. Other trial sets you could use, like there are other ones, but honestly, for most people, going with something that's really easy and it's going to stay procced all the time is the best way to go. So I would probably go with one of those. You could also go with another set from Dreadcell Reef, the stamina set there. But you would need to make sure you're keeping your stamina low. And if you're on a mag build, maybe not all your abilities, maybe that's just a whole nother thing that you've got to manage in addition to everything else. So in that case, again, I would probably just go with World Adepts or Reliquin. So yeah, and you could do something else. So if somebody else recommends another trial set and says, hey, this is good, or this would work well in this situation, don't be afraid to go with it. But I think you get a lot more damage out of that. No trials, so mainly dungeons. It's worth running it on normal if you can. If you're on PCNA, come by the guild. It's linked in the channel here. But you can run it on normal and at least get those trial sets, even if you're not normally running like harder trials. Just run them on normal, get the gear, and then you're good to go. The difference between perfected and non-perfected is like super small. But anyways, hopefully that more or less help you out. With that. Another set, though, if you want something easy to get or a non-trial set, you could just... I would personally go with the new set that's like from Galen. I always forget what it's called, but there's a crafted set. Somebody in chat will remember. What's the Galen crafted set? I even know like where it's at. It's like... Have I been there? What was that? I don't think so. The station is like here somewhere. Does anybody remember what this is? If you Google, like here, I'll just do it now. ESO best crafted sets. I always forget what this is called. Oh my gosh, these are horrible suggestions. Never mind. Don't do that. Order's Wrath. That's what it is. Order's Wrath. That would be a really good crafted set you could go with. Thanks, Dietrich. Oh man, I'm moving at like the speed of smell over here. Okay, all right, we'll get back on topic. All right, and then after this, after I do a parse here, hopefully a decent one, then we'll probably call it for today. So just because I've been streaming the trial before this, and I'm a little bit worn out, to be totally honest. Oh man, so we're gonna have to drop one of these skills, and I don't know what we should drop, but maybe I'll just not have it up most of the time. The problem is, and the issue before, and the reason I made this is because if you look at the sergeant staff, and this would actually work with a Sork, which is what we did with Nani. It says it procs a stack of sergeant's focus for 5 seconds, which increases your damage done. It can stack up to 4 times. So the way that works is each time it stacks, it re-ups that 5-second window. The thing is that means that when you swap to your back bar, you'll still have your extra heavy attack. And this Maelstrom should have been lightning in that case too, by the way. Maybe it could have worked. That means that I need to not be on the back bar for more than 5 seconds, which now as I like talk about it, I think maybe I could do that, but it's possible that we'll be dropping stacks of Sergeant Focus on this build if we're not careful. So that will be something we'll have to take into account. So I'm sorry, I'm capitulating here, but we're going to go back to a Lightning Staff, a Maelstrom one, and we'll use that. And we'll enchant this. We need another weapon enchant. Hopefully we have one. Nope. It's all right. We know where to get it. We need our Ewer of Enchantments. We need more weapon. We'll just take that. We'll take out what we need. Open that up. Cool, there we go. Go ahead and take both of them. Oh, it already has. Oh, it's the wrong staff. That's why. Maelstrom Lightning Staff. Hey, there we go. Cool. All right. We did have an enchant. I was just trying to enchant it with wood. A buff that we already had on it. Never heard of speed of smell. Well, you're welcome. Call it a night heroism. All right, so let's give this another shot. Main things that I want to be thinking about in this parse is that I need to keep this run down for the empower, because this is still a heavy attack build. If I let everything else fall off, I probably just need to make sure I'd hit that every 10 seconds. So, and I believe we said I'm casting that when this shows 18 seconds left. Unfortunately, with the built-in timers, it doesn't actually show you a time. So would really need to use like an add-on so that it would show us the number of seconds, unless that's an option you can change. I don't think it is. I normally use an add-on for this, but for today, we're just going to go with it. So yeah, let's just give it a shot here. And I probably won't talk during this because it's already a struggle for me as it is. And I'm holding down heavy attack here to make sure that I getting these casts off, trying to cast run. And I'm queuing up skills every single time. I'm hitting them way before, during the middle of the heavy attack. During the beam here, I'm just holding left click. So that as soon as I get out of it, I heavy attack again. Gonna make sure we get our barbed trap back down. And I'm always going, even though I'm having like skills drop off all the time, I'm still going heavy attack skill, heavy attack skill. 2 heavy attacks there. That was a mistake. That's all right. And I hit heavy attack, or I'm holding left click, but I hit the button too quick, so it queued up another skill cast is what happened there. Oh, it freaked out. My character can't do anything. Here we go. Great. That's going to look real good on the parse. Yeah, so we have way too many skills, not able to keep stuff up at all on this, so definitely need to drop some skills. Heavy attack buff is not looking good at all, but let's just take a look at our parse here and let's see how this is. Yeah, 57k, that's pretty rough. So what I want to look at when we come in here, so we want to look at our main buff from our Sergeant's Focus. So we're looking at that here. Somehow I'm dropping that. Well, not somehow, I guess, because this Maelstrom staff. So that kind of tells us like, hey, that uptime on that is looking pretty garbage because I'm staying on my back bar for longer than 5 seconds. So we're just going to switch and run double Sergeant staff. This is what Nani found. In theory, if I was better, would need to do that. So that alone, keeping that 4 stack up, it's dropping, which probably means that we're starting back over again. So that's significant. So that's going to help our damage a lot. So that's the first thing I would look for with a heavy attack build specifically. And then the other thing, that's interesting, it tells us about our crux. The other thing that I would be looking at is our empower up times, which should be, oh my gosh, they're just so low. Okay, 36. So I'm not casting trap, or sorry, not trap, ruin nearly as often as we need. So what we're gonna do here is I'm just gonna bail on one of these skills, I think. So this gives us our crux. So I'm just gonna leave this spot blank. We would want to swap out and put more passives here, but I guess we can do it. We can put on we'll put it on the back bar just so I don't throw myself off. I'm used to parsing with two dead abilities and then the rest of them. So we'll leave it like this. Is that going to be enough? I don't think so. So we'll throw another camo hunter here, and I'm just going to use these first couple. Oh, I already had camo hunter on here. So the goal here is that I'm just trying to use these first 3 abilities on both bars. And I'm going to ignore the last 2 because I think I can maybe do that. Let's give this a shot. Already casting wrong abilities. That's all right, though. We're just going to roll with it. Here we recast our run. Beam. going to recast our run again. I think I clipped that on accident. That's all right. And while we have all this time, I'm just thinking about, okay, what ability am I casting next here? I need to get our run down again. Some of these buttons aren't going off, but that's all right. I don't know if I've bar swapped too much with a heavy attack build. It seems like it doesn't always accept the cues once you've actually like bar swapped. Oh, that's a great point, Daedric. That yeah, keeping sergeants up is going to be tough with a beam. Yeah, like I'm hitting ability there, and it just did 2 heavy attacks in a row. Phew, that's still rough. Well, I would say that this build overall is a fail. This should be getting a lot more DPS there. I think the only thing to do would maybe be to drop the beam or either like embrace the beam. I feel like one way or the other would be the way to go there. And then if we did that, we could swap Cephaliarch's Flail to the version that consumed Crux and use that more often and generate Crux with some of the other abilities and then consume them. Let's take a look one more time here. So we've got our Sergeant. So this should honestly be like close to 100%. It could be that the 4.5 second channel is causing it to drop off like Daedric just mentioned here. But I would really expect this to be a lot higher. So that's a problem. And then again, we're going to find something similar. Our empower times are still horrible. Just for the sake of seeing what a heavy attack build could look like if we were doing this a little bit better, let's just try to cast a bunch of... We're just going to try to keep up our empower and then keep our heavy attack. This isn't a fun build. We're just trying to see what the damage would look like here if this was going okay. Yeah, when you bar swap, it doesn't always cooperate. It's kind of interesting. You can't like queue up an ability like you normally could. We'll just overcast our run here, and that'll help keep up our buff up times. But also there's a bit of damage that is the direct initial damage, and so it's kind of like using it as a semi-spammable here. $71K. All right, looking a little bit better, but still looking pretty rough. So we'll take a look here. So our critical damage, we are going way over. So that is one of the things where we should, oops, wrong thing. We should be dropping our backstabber and putting on something else here that would do more damage. So I'm trying to think what would probably AoE damage, Biting Aura. What would be best here? There's something else we could do here. I would have to either test it out or look, and I would actually honestly look at some of my other builds and see what else we put in there, because we're way over on critical damage. And then let me see here. Our sergeant's focus, yeah, much better, 91%. That's probably because, you know, when we start off, we don't have this proc, so this is pretty much 100%, I would imagine. Yeah, 97%, that's about right. So this is staying up pretty much all the time. Our Empower now has jumped up to 84%, so that's huge. We're getting a lot more damage here, and I'm sure we can see from our DPS per second, almost 20,000, and then 15. Compare that to some of our other ones. Yeah, you can see 5,000 difference, 8,000, 7,000 difference there. So pretty significant. So having the Empower up is definitely helping us a lot. You can see Arms of Reliquin giving us a lot of damage. Our ultimate giving us a ton of damage. Okay. So that could also be kind of messing with things too, affecting what we would actually get in a normal situation, as opposed to like getting too much burst damage, and then so on and so forth. When you have a build and you kind of are looking at like, hey, what ability should I swap out or swap or something like that, looking here can be kind of useful because it starts off with your highest. The thing to consider is like Cephaliarch's Flail. This is increasing all of our damage by 5%, so probably not something we want to drop. So, anyways, I'm gonna call it here, I think, for today, unless there's any other questions to be answered. Oh, hello, Lyriel. Didn't see you jumping in here. I think we're going to call it here. I would say that this is not a very good build. I am not happy with this, but it's a decent start. So what we'll do is I will come back. Maybe I'll look at this offline and see, work out some timings and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do this again, and we'll also talk about how to figure out the difference between choosing different morphs of an ability and kind of how to do the damage and everything like that. So let's see, from Lyriel. So what would you do if you were testing what skill is best? Just swap one thing out at a time, see how it changes the parse. Lyriel here is my wife, by the way, so she's giving me a hard time. So what would you do if you're testing out what skill is best? Just swap one thing out at a time. For skills, what I will tend to do, I guess we can just do it real quick. It's all right. It's all right, Lyriel. I don't need to eat dinner or anything. It's fine. Okay. So what I would do here is I would pull this up, and what were we looking at earlier that we were considering? Oh, I know what it was. It was Destruction Staff. So let's get a skill respec going. We don't have one. We'll purchase one from the Crown Store real quick. Okay, so we have that up so we can look at it. We'll shrink this down. Okay, so Unstable Wall of Elements, we have damage is 1080. Wait, was it 1080 or was it 1084? 1084. So we'll do our damage per second, any burst damage, then we'll add that in, which we do have here, 4473. Cool. And then probably, actually what we'll do, insert here, and then we'll say duration. So this is 10 seconds. there, and then we'll try to figure out our total damage here. And actually, we'll just skip a step. We'll just go with DPS. So we're trying to solve for DPS here. So what that is going to be our damage per second. And some of the skills, I don't think they've changed all of them. Like some of them, it's really weird. Like they'll say it does 1,000 damage per second. And then other ones, it'll say it does like 20,000 damage over 20 seconds. And you have to like do the math yourself. So it's kind of weird. Yeah, I would calculate it and then I would parse Lyriel. That's kind of what I was getting at because, yeah, the issue with, yeah, I don't know. The issue with that is that like you can parse, but if you change more than one thing, it's just like, what's the difference? And then each individual parse, you can vary by a significant amount, several K. And so a lot of times when you're making these really small changes, at least for me, how well I parse might change from one parse to another if I'm paying attention to something else or if I get distracted or just hit a wrong button. So it's not, to me at least, you have to parse so much. And on the one hand, that's not bad because like the extra practice is good, but on the other hand, yeah. Anyways, so we'll multiply it times the duration here, and then we'll add in our burst damage, and then we want to probably divide all of this by the duration to get our DPS, our damage per second. So I think we said this was 10 seconds. Cool. So that gives us our number for that. Now, when we talk about the blockade of elements, kind of the same deal, except for it's just going to be the same thing here. 1084, and that's going to be for 15 seconds. Oh gosh. What am I doing? Hit the wrong button. I take it back. All right, there we go. So again, this is the issue where like this looks like it does more damage, but we also need to consider that we could add in a spammable here. So let's take a look at our spammables. In this case, it doesn't work super well because we're like talking about a heavy attack or something, but let's say Ruin Blades was our spammable. That's a terrible one, actually. Sevelior's Flail? Yeah, there we go. So 7469. So we'll say that we could squeeze in one more cast of Sevelior's Flail here, and then we see that the actual damage per second, that's not being calculated correctly, is it? Yeah, it's just adding to it. Why is Excel, why are you doing this to me? Do I need to put some extra brackets here? Is Excel like doing order of operations weird? I feel like a crazy person. What am I doing wrong? I really need some food. Oh, no, that's right. That's fine. I'm like dropping a zero med. I'm sorry, guys. I need to go get some food. So then we can see here that the actual damage that you can do more. There's other considerations with this, but we'll just leave it here for now. So anyways, I'm going to stop the stream and I'm going to go eat because I'm starving. I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you like this, go ahead and thumbs up the stream and let me know. And we can do more of these in the future. And I'll try to pick a class that I know a little bit more about and kind of study. The whole point was to kind of come in this and to just be like, hey, what would you do if you were making a new build? And yeah, I think we did that okay. There's some clear issues with doing like a heavy attack and then having something like this 4.5 second channel and then also not using OConsole. So there's a lot of complicating factors, but I'll take a look at this and I'll come back and I'll say, hey, after some more thought, here's what I've come up with. But again, just let me know if you think this is interesting or helpful for you, and maybe we'll do some more in the future. Appreciate you guys watching. And Daedric, I appreciate you also stopping by and giving advice and helping out and stuff, man. Do a vote in the Discord for builds. Yeah, or honestly, if you've got an idea, just ping me and suggest it. Maybe we can just do it, and the two of us can just walk through it and just do one together. I'm happy to do that. Nani kind of picked this one because she was thinking about doing it. She actually wanted to do something. Oh, I think it was a Warden, but I've already done like a bunch of Warden videos, so I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before that wasn't already out there. But yeah, I'm happy to do something, kiddies. All right. I'm really going to go this time. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll catch you later.